Okay, so I jumped up early morning, headed out. It was going to be a really long day, like 10, 12 hours. I think 10 hours to get to San Cristobal. Originally, I had planned to go up to like Cancun and down through Belize, but somebody invited me to their place in Chiapas in San Cristobal. So had a little bit of a route change and headed out that way. Everybody told me as I left Tezpotlan that I would see this Gorilla Rock, which is a big hill that if you look at it, pause it maybe, but it looks like the profile of a gorilla head, so it was pretty cool. As I was riding, at lunchtime I realized that my bag had ripped and lost everything behind me that was in that plastic bag, so my day's water and snacks were gone, but luckily there are plenty of places to stop along the way, so I was able to stop later on and refill, but I thought it was funny, so I took pictures of the shredded bag that I had no idea had shredded till I had stopped for lunch. So continued on. As I continued, I saw that the mountains had snow on the top. I also pulled over to take this picture just before a police speed trap. So I had never seen a police speed trap, but when I got just beyond here, there was. Something else I really liked was the architecture in this part of Mexico. Some really nice bridges. I pulled over at this little spot so I could get shots of that one. And then it was back on the road. Now, the road from Tezpotlan to Chiapas, I will tell you, 99% of that road looks like Florida. It's just straight and boring. There's not a lot to it. In the morning, you have these nice hills, and I was going through some really cool clouds, and the elevation changes were pretty intense. And then it's like this also as you get into Chiapas, but not so much anything in between. So luckily, I wasn't really filming in between, and I didn't realize that till after. So I've got some great filming going out of Tezpotlan here and then headed into Chiapas. And I believe this is actually as we're getting into Chiapas after like 10 hours of riding. So everything in between, there's some cities that are pretty large looking cities that really almost look like they're abandoned. Not that many people there. But as I got into Chiapas, it was an enjoyable ride. Some really nice curves, higher elevations. It was a little bit wet. Parts of the day were light rain and stuff, but you can tell too that with the road work and other things, there's quite a bit of traffic. You also have a lot of trucks going this way, I believe because they're going to the border into Guatemala and stuff. But anyway, I got to deal with some moderate traffic heading down towards San Cristobal. The nice thing was that I had a full oil change worth of oil on my bike and filter and all kinds of other stuff because Kyle in San Cristobal de las Casas had invited me and said that he would help me do my oil change and get the bike reset and just go through it. It was good because it was going to be my first real service appointment since I'd left Portland, Oregon. And I think it was right around 3,500 miles into the trip or something. So I've been carrying the weight of all the oil and stuff, which I know doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're on a trip like this, carrying 4 quarts of oil and a filter and everything, it takes up a lot of space. And maybe it's not so much the weight, but it's the space that it takes up. So I was excited to be offloading that stuff from the bike, checking it out, making sure everything was fresh and good on the bike and that we were in good shape. As I headed down towards San Cristobal. So this is the road as I headed into Chiapas and towards the home of Kyle. Now, something I will say is that the whole day I was just wondering, like, who is this guy, Kyle? Like, wants to take me in. I gave him like every excuse in the book why I didn't want him to worry about helping me because I try to be pretty independent and I'm typically pretty excited to let people help me, but he seemed like way too nice, like way too friendly. I don't know. I felt like there was going to be some kind of a catch. The other thing that I do as so he had offered to do my oil change and everything else. So anyway, he was being so nice to me. I just was like, sure, I'll be there. So right here's a really cool spot going through Chiapas. You can see the water on the sides. I didn't realize how amazing it looks through here, and I wish I'd have had the camera up on my head so I could look over some of these bridges for you. At this point, too, I was definitely running out of gas, and I thought that I was going to see a gas station real soon, and I realized that the gas stations are pretty spread out, and so you don't really see it in this video, but I probably went 30, maybe 30 miles past zero on the bike, past where it said I wasn't going to be able to go another mile, just looking for gas. So that was kind of an interesting thing that day. I did find gas eventually. This is further along. This is, as I believe, as we're kind of getting into Chiapas, into the city. Now, as I was coming into the city, I didn't really research anything about Chiapas before heading out or heading through. And so, because originally, like I said, I was going to go through Cancun, and so I hadn't really fully anticipated what there was to see or what there was in Chiapas. I was just going to go meet this Kyle guy and see what it was like. So as I was pulling in, I thought it was going to be maybe more of like a pueblo. It looked nice, but it didn't look like amazing. And I'm sitting there thinking, man, I gave up going through Belize and seeing Tikal and everything else in Guatemala so that I could come down here to Chiapas. So I wasn't super excited, but I don't know. I thought it would be a little bit more remote feeling as I pulled in through here. But this is just riding in and through Chiapas as I'm heading to San Cristobal. And the way that the city goes, you kind of go up and around it on these roads. And the elevation changes are amazing. So you'll see I kind of go up and around the town, and then as we get into the next kind of section of video, you'll see that you really start climbing the mountain, and I started going through some really dense clouds. You just throw your hazard lights on when you get to those clouds and keep riding. So this is just riding here. I believe that this is just the edge going into Chiapas still, and we'll just have to see what we have on here. So had some fun following this guy up the hill as we were getting the elevation. It was kind of like one of the first guys I ever saw on my whole trip that was just riding to ride for fun. He might have been commuting. He was probably commuting. But it seemed like he was out there just to ride and enjoy. A lot of the people that I saw down there was like, well, that was their main form of transport. And you could tell that this guy on his bike was actually an enthusiast. Had cool, gear that he liked and a bike that he probably really liked. He wasn't just commuting. So we went up the mountain, and you can look down into the city from here, and it's an amazing view, really. So I just followed him for a while, and eventually got to a point where I wanted to move the camera up to my helmet so that I could see kind of out and about. So that's why I am going to pull over here shortly, and that'll allow us to get a little bit of a camera change. So here we are. I think that this is the first time that I had the camera up top. You'll see I've got a light on the dash. I think that light is because I was due for my service. I think it's a service light for the oil change, which is great and perfect because, I was getting an oil change. You'll also see I've got my hazards blinking. You get into these clouds and fog, and that's kind of what people do. So you still pass and ride like normal. You do slow down just a little bit, but you throw your hazards on. That way people know where you're at, and it's kind of just what people do down there. In the States, I've never seen anybody do that. But in Mexico, I saw it all the time. Anytime I got into any of this kind of coverage, slow cars would pull to the sides. Everybody has their hazards on, and it's kind of like business as usual. So business is normal, and it's fun. I actually liked riding through the clouds because it was just a change in scenery. Things were getting greener and more jungly, and the clouds and the mist made it a lot of fun. So this is actually as I was riding into San Cristobal in Chiapas, and this is when my eyes opened to the kind of place where Kyle lived and how much more amazing it was than my initial impression of Chiapas as I was on the other side of the mountain. This is just a really nice, magical little pueblo. It's big. It's actually really big, but just really tight, narrow streets, colorful housing, a lot of history here. I can't tell you the full history, and right here I didn't understand what was going on, so I thought that alto sign meant if you're tall, keep going, don't stop. Everything's kind of one way, and then that went to a two-way, so that's why I had no idea that I was cutting in line. I don't know the full history, but I do realize or believe this is one of the first really colonial towns in Central America. So even, and we'll see it a little bit later, but the Cathedral of San Cristobal, I believe, is the oldest cathedral in Central America. Definitely one of the first that was put there by the conquistadors, and there's just a ton of history here. I think that you could easily spend, I don't know, easily a week. I think you could easily spend a week just here alone, seeing everything that there is to see. So much history, culture. They have amazing restaurants, as I found out from Kyle later. I didn't know that there was so much diversity in this place. Also, there's a lot of money, a lot of well-off people, and I didn't see a lot of transients or anything. It looked like people obviously working hard, moving around, getting through the town, but you don't see a lot of people living in the streets here, and that was just my first impression. I could be completely wrong. I also noticed a lot of like newer motorcycles and cars just street parked even at nighttime here. Brand new BMW motorcycles, stuff that's worth money, and people just leave it out. So my guess is it's a pretty safe little place. And in contrast, I want you, just notice this now, because I'll go through Antigua in the next video. But this town to me was a lot more impressive than Antigua, Guatemala, which, I don't know, maybe that's sacrilegious to say, but to me, they had a lot of really cool buildings, a lot of really cool architecture, history. It's bigger, it's tighter, it's just more fun. Yeah, they don't have cobblestone streets that are quite as rough as Antigua. Maybe not quite as many of the old colonial ruins, but they do have a lot of buildings from the same eras. It's way bigger, it felt way more active, and it didn't feel like it was just overrun by tourists. Antigua feels very overrun by tourists. It almost feels fake the way that they have it set up there. And what's weird is people are not enjoying everything the way that you would think they would in Antigua. But here, it's a really diverse place. You can see just tons of people, tons of stuff going on, a lot of color. And I love these tight streets. I like the tight, narrow alleys, one way, lots of color, lots of stucco. I would love to live in a place like this, because it's just got a lot going on for it. So I was looking and I saw this like basketball court, and then I realized as I pull up to right here that it's a Mormon church. And guess what? I'm Mormon. So got some pictures with the missionaries, talked to them in Spanish, told them about how I used to live in El Salvador, had some fun there, told them where I was going, and we were off. At this point I was only, I don't know, maybe 2 miles from Kyle's place. It was like 5 minutes, I think, from that Mormon church to Kyle's place over here. Now Kyle has been running an orphanage, I think, for like 8 years, and if I remember right, they have 6 kids. I could be wrong. I think that they have 4 or 6 kids. couple of their own, a couple that they're just in the process of getting adopted, and they're actually just about to move back to Seattle. So really neat for them. He and his wife have been working really hard, giving everything that they can, and he's just a survivor. He helps everybody who comes through here, offers his shop up, offers up a room, gives you food, gives you water, bottled water, and takes care of you. So I was riding up. I thought that this was his place, so I pulled in, rode up. He must have been watching for me, because there he is coming up behind me. Hey, I'm Kyle. Let's get you back to the right place. So I get turned around, and I'm sure some of you guys watching this who have been through San Cristobal have also stayed at Kyle's place. And what a blessing that guy is. He's got to be like one of the most Christ-like nice people I've ever met in my life. He was so nice and over the top that's why I always thought there was a catch. Like, what's gonna happen? Is this guy gonna be like a cannibal and eat me in my sleep, or rob me, or what's going on? Like, I'm a pretty trusting person, but this guy was just so nice, so willing to do everything that you almost wonder, and you wish that there were more people like him in the world. He's down here giving everything that he can to help people in need. I mean, he's been running an orphanage on like zero pay. He had told me that they would drive to the coast and buy, get coconuts so they could bring them back to San Cristobal and sell them at a profit. I mean, the guy does anything he can to survive, and that's what life's about, is working hard and having great experiences and loving people. And so he took me in, gave me a place to stay. He, happily took me out and gave me a tour of the town. So just an amazing guy. So we jumped in his car. He drove me around. This is the San Cristobal Cathedral I was telling you about. It's from what he said, oldest one in Central America, at least. Certainly in Mexico, I think Central America, and maybe further south. These are just some of the steps down through the city. We went and we had Middle Eastern food, actually, and then he went back and did an oil change. Told me to sit down. He wanted to do the oil change, so he worked on the oil change. And in the morning, his daughters had made me crepes, savory crepes. I got a picture with the family, 6 kids, 4 of their own and 2 adopted. That's his awesome wife and awesome family. And then after that in the morning, I was off. So this is, as I'm leaving, everybody told me to go to moto camp in Antigua, Guatemala, so I said, let's do it. I stopped in Comitan. What was funny is that I pulled over to take this picture, and a policeman told me I couldn't park there because it's a crosswalk, and he didn't want me there. So I handed him the camera, asked him to hold it while I got off and pushed the bike, but before I did it, could he take a picture? So he took the picture for me, handed me the camera, I got back on it, and I was off. Unfortunately, my camera did not record, and I don't know if it's because I bought a cheap one or what, but my ride to the Guatemalan border did not get recorded. This is at the border. I'm getting inspected, getting my money back, because you have to do a deposit with Mexico for a trip permit, and then I was into Guatemala. So unfortunately, didn't get a lot of videos here. I saw this A86 coupe. I had to pull over, had to talk to them, tell them they had an awesome car. They had no idea what it was, but I told them if they ever sold it, sell it for a lot. Headed into Guatemala. This is like one of the only videos I have of Guatemala. You can tell, or I guess entering, you can tell how rough everything gets. As soon as you're into Guatemala, everything is narrower. There are speed bumps absolutely everywhere. Something that Kyle warned me of is that in Guatemala, and even leaving Chiapas, is that there are a lot of the indigenous people. Sometimes they'll do roadblocks and other stuff, stop you because they don't want you using the roads. Something else he told me about, though, is that you'll be riding and the road will be like this, and then it'll just go to dirt. The other thing is people don't really drive courteously in Guatemala. The buses do whatever they want. The cars do whatever they want. I could not believe the difference riding in Mexico versus riding in Guatemala. Mexico feels a lot more like the States, where Guatemala was just like the Wild West. You just do whatever you want, it felt like. So I apologize that I don't have more videos. I'm going to be going back and doing this ride again. So on the next one, I will take 2 or 3 cameras and make sure that they are recording as I go. But you can see when I was looking at the route to go from San Cristobal to Antigua, it said it was like a 9 or 10 hour ride, and I kind of didn't believe it because I think it was only like 200 miles or maybe 300 miles, and I thought, man, 10 hours to do 300 miles is nuts. But as soon as I got into Guatemala and saw that you're literally moving anywhere from 5 to maybe 40 miles an hour the entire time, it sunk in real quick. It was going to take me all day to get there. So I rode and rode, and I got to Huehuetenango, which is where a lot of people said, stop, and there's hotels and stuff there and whatever. But when I got to the town, I thought, it's early enough in the day. I may as well keep going to Antigua because I'm pretty sure that I can, and I've got daylight left. The big problem I ran into, though, was that I didn't realize that there was a time change. So I had moved forward an hour from where I was in Mexico, I believe. And part of that, too, with this change where I was at, was it got darker way early. So when I was like an hour outside of Antigua, it got dark, which was a pain. But it was kind of what I had to do. So it was about an hour. I took it really slow. Traffic was heavy. So I don't know. I wasn't riding as rural. I really, on this trip, the whole goal is never ride at night. Sometimes you get stuck, though, and you can't always plan for certain circumstances. So I had planned for arriving in Antigua around 5. And with the time shift and everything, it was going to be around 6, and it got dark at about 5. So I thought I was going to be there easily, kind of during that sunset hour, and I did not get there during the sunset hour. So I rode and rode, and the roads were tight, and there were landslides and cars all over the place and tight curves. And people crossing every line that they could think they could cross, but I made it. So rode all day, went from San Cristobal to Antigua in a day. I do leave pretty early. I don't go out and party. I don't drink. So it's easy for me to do long days of riding like this, and it's actually pretty fun. So I really enjoyed it. I had fun going through here. This is the park in the middle of Antigua. Some of the buildings, some of the architecture you'll see there. And, it's a really nice town. Getting there at nighttime is kind of fun because they light everything up. But I went into, I forget what this place is called, Madre de Tierra or something like that. Went in and I got meat because I wanted it, and those look like awesome rolls, but that's actually potatoes. That was an amazing meal. It's kind of overpriced. Everything in Antigua is. The Wendy's looks like colonial Wendy's, which is really cool. Something that kind of was funny is I always thought Antigua everything looked like it was gonna be really old, and I was thinking pyramids, and I didn't realize it was a colonial city, so that was kind of an awakening. Also, I thought I was getting to the Moto Hostel because Frank and Frey Hostel had tons of bikes in front of it, and it's on the same street as the Moto Camp. So I paid them and got in, and then I quickly realized I was the only person there, and Moto Camp was like a block away. So the Moto Camp guys booked me up, and I actually stayed there on the second night. But I had a really nice room here, and I wish that I maybe would have stayed there another night and just gone down and chatted with the guys at Moto Camp, because this was a better place to stay, and I think it was the same money. So long day, and we'll have a new video coming soon. Stay tuned.